The US government is calling for dialogue. What kind of dialogues can be had?
I think the first thing is the US government is the wrong one to call for any dialogue anywhere in the world. What it's doing in Jerusalem is basically not supporting dialogue, but basically goading the world to go to war.
Yes.
In itself, before you remove the log in your friend's eye, just remove that speck. I mean, that speck in your friend's eye, remove the log in your own. Hillary Clinton won fair and square with 300 million votes over and above the president who was declared President Trump. But because the US is a constitutional democracy that follows certain procedures, it had a peaceful transition. Hillary Clinton attended the swearing-in ceremony of Trump, despite holding back her tears, because this is a stolen election, and the world knows it. For God's sake, why is Robert Godek and co. not calling for the dialogue between Trump and Clinton and the various communities in America, the Hispanics, the African Americans, the Irish, the Italians, and all those who are there, all those tribes which are in America? Why are they not calling for dialogue? Now, Kenya is a constitutional democracy. Dialogue can be interpreted differently. Of course, it doesn't need to come from outside, and I agree with Raila Odinga. Friends have their role. Families have their role. Friends cannot come out and tell you what to do and what not to do. They can only give you advice and in privacy. Therefore, the idea of a dialogue about our future is to continue, and it will continue across generations. We have not reached the end of our democracy. Therefore, I take with great exception as a Kenyan any attempt by any external power to call for dialogue. Why do I say so? Because this election had finality, and that is what we are supposed to respect. It had finality. It started, we had 123 days of electoral process, the longest electoral process in the history of humanity.
Yes.
Now, why did we go through that? So that we can have the finality. Soccer, you start with 90 minutes, go to 30 minutes, extra time. Then you go to penalties. Whether you are the strongest team or the weakest, you accept the verdict and wait for the other time. That is the basis on which democracy is anchored. Therefore, we had election on 8th of August. Uhuru Kenyatta was declared winner with over 1.4 million votes. The court, Raila Odinga contested it, went to court, which was really what he ought to have done and did well. Then the election was nullified. Kenyatta was very angry, you saw it. Yes. But he accepted the law as it were. Then the court declared that there shall be election in 60 days. And that was done on the 26th of October. An election was held. Raila Odinga boycotted the election. He never lost the election. So he has no basis commenting on this election because he boycotted.
Okay.
Yeah. Seriously. If you are a true Democrat, you have no basis in that. Wait for 9th of August, 2022. This one of 26th, you have no basis. The person who has basis commenting on this is Ekuro Akot, who was the runners-up, also, I think. He came second. Yeah. He has the basis to comment whether it was or was not democratic. Yeah. Of course, we do know that efforts were made, some of which in other countries that are not as vulnerable as we are, would have taken all that group to court and possibly jailed them. But we are a vulnerable nation, and we accept we are vulnerable. Weaponizing a community, turning your community into a weapon in a political game is immoral, it is criminal, it is bad here and in the skies.
All right. Michael, if I can rope you into this. Raila's swearing in is termed as unconstitutional. The AG said it can be punished by death. So does NASA have any legal options right now?
First of all, I want to start by perhaps referring to the questions that was levied on Professor Kagwanja on the basis of whether the dialogue is necessary or not. I'll say that it is unfortunate that outsiders and friends are seeing a possibility of a dialogue in our country when us ourselves do not see that we need a dialogue. When people say that election was done and it was done in finality, they could be correct or not, depending on where they stand from. But I can say for free that the people who need to talk about the election in this country are perhaps not the government or even those that stood for those positions, but the Kenyans themselves that went to the polls and voted. They know whether their votes made a difference. And if they didn't make a difference, they have a right to stand and say, it seems that my vote does not make a difference in this country. What can we do to enable our votes make a difference so that our votes can elect the leaders we want? Until that one is resolved, we will have issues whether you have a legitimate elected president or not, according to the eyes of the, the right or the left in this case. And so, for us to say that election has been done and so let's move on, that is quite an unfortunate way of looking at things. It's just by assuming everybody else, if you ate well and you're living well, you think that everybody else is living like you, and so let's forget about them and just concentrate on what we're doing. This election had issues, and they had issues that were taken to the courts, and the first election was nullified. If it didn't have issues, then we'll be talking about something else today. And the second election that was done on the 26th equally had issues, and that is why people went to court. The courts rule as a rule, that's fine. But that does not mean that everybody is fine with it. And if you say that the rules, the judgment was made, and therefore, if you are not for it, we really don't care about you, people have to talk and find a way on how this country can move forward. Yes. The reality is, whether we like it or not, there are people who support Honorable Raila, and it is not a single community, as Professor is saying. I find that to be quite unfortunate with them. To mention that one individual seems to be rallying behind a single community. It's not a single community. There are many people who are supporting Honorable Raila, whether it's in the eastern part of this country, western part of this country, southern part of this country, even the northern part, even central province, really, where the president comes from, there are people who are supporting Honorable Raila. And so you cannot wish and narrowify this discussion to a single community. That's quite unfortunate to a man that I will respect in terms of, academia world. But let's move forward and see what the opposition is saying.
Yes.
The opposition is talking about them swearing Raila.
Yeah.
I think before we even think of whether he will be sworn in or not, perhaps this was a time that the government needed to extend a serious dialogue opportunity to the man that is supposed to be sworn in. If he's sworn in for any reason, and I'm telling you, and take this to the bank, this country is not going to be as peaceful as we think about it. It does not matter whether Raila leads a demonstration or not in one corner of the country or another corner of the country. Anybody who follows that route will be interfered with in terms of doing his daily activities. When there's demonstration in Nairobi, whether you like it or not, whether you're pro-Jubilee or pro-NASA, you will be interfered with in doing business. What about the investors in this country that perhaps will want a peaceful coexistence and peaceful environment to do business, to be able to bring tourists in this country? They will not come when people are on the road. And so the sooner we realize that perhaps this is the most critical moment for Uhuru government to extend an olive branch to the opposition and have a serious dialogue, the better. Otherwise, this country is headed in the wrong direction, where they have things that we really don't care about, they have not. And for that reason, let's move forward. Unfortunately, that's how even the intellectual think. And unfortunately, it is in this country where we have serious intellectual dishonesty. A lawyer comes here and he will tell you something totally different from another lawyer, and they're reading the same constitution, simply because they seem to be either supporting the government or not supporting the government. I think Kenyans need to come to the board and say where the problem is the electioneering process, where many people seem not to agree with them on how they conduct the election in this country. Once that is resolved, then we can move forward. Otherwise, we'll just be going round and discussing everything the way we want, and nothing to build the country.
So the question that I asked is, it is said that it's unconstitutional. Then do they have any, you want to? Yes.
First and foremost, we need to know who we are and who we are talking for.
Yes.
I wouldn't sit here and say I'm talking for William Ruto or for Uhuru Kenyatta or for anybody. That's wrong. We are Kenyans because we are brought together by a constitution. We all swear to a constitutional democracy. And a constitutional democracy, like a soccer match or any other game, has rules and procedures and has logical consequences or results. And those results are to be adhered to. And it gives us a time for the same. But we are not saying, or one is not saying that nations don't have dialogues. Nations will always have dialogues. The question is, dialogue on what? Now, why Professor Githu Muigai, the Attorney General, is talking about swearing in as, treasoners, and I say it's true, it's high treason, is because in a constitutional democracy, you cannot have two people sworn in at the same time. If you go to our constitution, the procedures of swearing in a president, the leader of the land, are very, very detailed. They are not just clear, they are detailed, including the time by which you must be sworn in. 10, between 10 and 2. So the procedures are very clear. So anything outside that is illegal. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that it is illegal. I listened to my friend and brother, James Orengo, and see him speaking, and I wonder what is happening. Because James is a lawyer. He knows that anything that is not done according to the law, laid down law, is illegal. Now, people talked about Twilight robbery, referring to the Kibaki swearing in, because he was sworn in at 4:30.
Yes.
Now, because of that, we had dialogue and changed our constitution, or rather, in the new constitution, we included all the details about swearing in. So the so-called oath, the Odinga oath, is treason.
Yes.
That one is clear, and there's no doubt about that.
So my
but
question
it is not. I wouldn't care whether it is treason or not. I would want to know why he is daring the nation along those lines, and I want to venture the argument as follows: that one, having felt that he was not declared the winner, because he was not, and it is not Uhuru Kenyatta who declared himself, it's not William Ruto who declared himself, it's the institutions we have adopted ourselves as a country, institutions. Then he's pushing his game. He's playing what you call the monkey game, where you hold a child and you want a banana, and you are threatening you are going to throw the child down unless the banana comes. That's called a monkey game. So you want to swear in, to swear yourself in, so you have two centers of power. For your information, it doesn't matter whether Uhuru Kenyatta wants it or not. Uhuru cannot be sworn. Raila cannot be sworn in, because there are systems in this country. Yes. So he will not be sworn in. You can take that to the bank.
So do they have any legal
No, it's not a question of legal. Even that asking that question itself is mischievous, because you get the constitution and read the part. It is not just legal or illegal. It is treasonous, high treason. If you have done 101 of law, that's what you get. Then they will push the game further and say, if we are not satisfied, there are some who are eating and others not eating. That communist, socialist kind of dialogue or discourse. Then we are going to the next stage, which is what my friend David D has been pushing, secession. It is not the first time this country has had secession threats, or not even threats, action. The Somalis did not joke. They wanted to secede, and they knew where the boundaries were, where they were seceding. People at the coast have talked about secession, but we have dealt with a serious secession issue and resolved it, right?
Yes.
So secession will be dealt with, like, if my son is conscripted by the government, my son Kwame is conscripted by the government to go and fight secession, I will allow him to go because it's a national duty. You see the point? Secession swearing in and all these threats are not a threat to Uhuru Kenyatta. No, they are a threat to us as a people. Do you get that?
Yes.
It's a threat to us. You cannot stand here in a national television talking about secession, swearing in of a second president when the president has sworn in. You are simply pushing the country to where other countries have gone. The United States had to defend its own sovereignty. Abraham Lincoln made the ultimate decision that this country is going to remain one. Kenya will remain one country. Obasanjo made the decision, Nigeria will remain one. No Biafra, no nonsense. Nigeria is one. You get that? And Kenya will remain one. This is not to say we will not have dialogue on how to move on as a people. This is really not the point. As a people, as Kenyans, we will need to move on together. How do we move on together? We strengthen our democracy, we strengthen our institutions. It is true. IEBC and CORE might have not done the best job as we'd like them to have the job. We need to decide how do we carry the 2022 election with the best of the institutions that the world can have. In the previous election, the same argument was made. What was the result? We have the most expensive election in the world because we bought the machine that are hack-proof, technology-proof and globally it's hack-proof, it is inviolable, and you can ask all the countries, ask India, ask so. We did that. It is now said that that election did not come in, we have so-called electoral injustice. Now, that is a discourse we need to have.
All right, Professor, we need to move on. But Michael, you seem like you want to comment on that. But before that, let's just listen into the bite by Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai.
World People's Assemblies are institutions totally unknown to the Constitution of Kenya and totally unknown to the County Governments Act. They have purportedly been established in violation of the Constitution. These monies can be surcharged to those persons who have been involved in that process.
All right, thereby People Assembly, the Attorney General is saying the People Assembly is equally illegal. So where does this leave the entire process? Michael?
You know, one of the things that I listened to the Attorney General, and it reminds me of the former Attorney General. In fact, at one point he mentioned that even imagining the death of a president was treasonous in itself. And you know, Attorney General Jojo was very categorical that you couldn't even talk about the death of a president. Yeah. You know, that would mean that you'll go to jail. When Professor Githu Muigai is one of the most learned men in this country in matters of law, says that it is treasonous. It is, because it is written in the law. But that does not suffice in the circumstance that we're talking about. We're talking about a People's Assembly. You and I are the people that elect our leaders. And the Constitution is very clear in Article 1 that we can delegate that responsibility to the elected leaders, or we can take it upon ourselves. Now, if that's a direction that you know, NASA group is taking and saying we want to go back to the People's Assembly and let you know, have our leader, then it is not unconstitutional, as others may say. Yeah. Some will say it is unconstitutional, and so others will also say that it is not constitutional. It is constitutional in the sense that people are taking back the authority that they've given to the elected leaders that they think are not doing what they sent them to do, either in the Senate or in the county assemblies or in the National Assembly. And they have a right to do that. By the way, when we're talking about issues of secession, it cannot be wished away easily like that. You need to find out exactly why are men and women of this country talking about secession. We are into about our 54 years since independence. Why do we think that the government is not serving the people in a manner that is inclusive? Let me give you some statistic when we're talking about exclusivity and inclusivity in this government. We're talking about approximately 184 parastatals in this country. And out of 184 parastatals, 129 of them their CEOs are coming from one community, that is a Kikuyu community. And about another 50-something communities are scrambling for 54 different parastatals. Remember that when we're talking about these parastatals, when you're a CEO of a parastatal, you are able to employ your own workers, your own employees into that organization. You are able to influence tenders. You're able to do a lot of things. And when one community seems to be getting
and that's not
more
true.
than almost...
That's
can
a
I
lie.
have my time?
That's a lie.
Get
No,
back to you,
it
Professor.
would
Let
be
him
very
That's a lie.
important.
But you shouldn't lie to the public.
No. Let me
it's not
just,
true.
let me
It's not
just,
true.
let me just. That's
You're
not a
just
lie. Those are
inciting-
facts.
You're firing out the nation. It's not true.
When we are talking about facts,
No,
it
it's
is
not a
facts,
fact.
whether
I'm
you
telling
like
you
it
it's
or
a fact.
not.
No,
So
I'm
let
saying
me
it's not a
let me
fact.
continue. When
Professor, let him
yes,
finish his
let me
statement, and
continue.
then you will make
But
your
When we are
I was not
talking-
informing
No.
him.
Okay.
I was telling you as the
No,
moderator.
I think it would
that's
be
not
important
a
for me
fact.
to
But
finish
go
my
ahead.
Let him
point.
finish.
Go ahead, sir.
I can tell you for free, even when you look at the line of police force in Nairobi alone, it is either Kikuyu or a Kalenjin, a Kikuyu or a Kalenjin, a Kikuyu or a Kalenjin are the leaders of the police force in this country. When we are talking about issues of exclusivity and inclusivity, we are not just talking about two tribes. You're talking about an entire nation of 42 different tribes, whether it is from the Koso or Turkana, or whether it is from all other these places. They have very learned people. They have people who have the skills. You cannot have a country that the only people you see either in parastatal or in the executive are mostly from the two communities. We must come to a realization. And I think, I remember Dr. Kivunja very, very well coming out and giving even the statistic of the people that were employed in State House at that particular time. The numbers were staggering from one single community. When we want to talk about issues that are bedeviling this country, we must address them from the issues of employment. You employ one person in the parastatal or you employ one person in a government office, that person supports another 20 families. When other communities feel that they do not have that opportunity to be in government, they do not have that opportunity to be in the parastatal, then we are creating animosity. We are creating a situation where basically others feel that they're not part of the government. When we're talking about issues of development in this country, if you look at Nairobi, you look at Central Province, and you look at other places, you can't compare them with other places in this country. And why? Because some places were perceived to have been opposition zones. And for that reason, very little development was going into those places until when devolution came in. And it's also came, but with this whole, bit of teething problem here and there. What we are talking about, until and then when the servers will be open. There are people in this country that believes that no, election was not done well. And I can say, I know some people will say, but they were given access, the court were given access. It was limited access until the election on the 8th of August will be declared to the public in terms of the server, declared and the figures. People will still be talking about electoral malpractices until we mention that why are we particularly trying to profile one tribe called the Luo community. If you look at the people that have died in this demonstration since the election, more Luos have died in this thing. And the question is, how coincident is it that the policeman who has a gun, who is shooting in the crowd, can only identify the Luos and shoot the very Luos and not the other tribes? These are some of the issues that if we do not talk about them, and let me tell you, it's not just the Luos that are into this.
Yeah.
As I'd said before, the Kalenjins are into this. Even the Kikuyus are into this. We have so many Luyas that are in this. Many, many people in this country are supporting a different cause that they think that they are denied in the government by the quest of voting, and their votes do not turn out to bring them the leaders they want. Until that is resolved, we'll still just be mark timing here.
All right. Professor, so does it matter that NASA says it does not recognize the president?
No, you know, anybody can fail to recognize the president
Yes.
In your private place. Let me repeat again. Kenya is a constitutional democracy. We are guided by the Constitution. I don't care what individuals hold. In any case, as a citizen, you can hold your own position. There are people here who don't recognize God. They're called atheists. You know that? They don't recognize God. They don't even believe God exists. They are atheists. Now, so not to recognize the president, you know, is your choice, just like you don't recognize God, but you keep it private. But the moment you start turning it into a program, then you are declaring a war on the nation. Yeah. And declaring a war on the nation, you'll expect that to be done. I think the most unfortunate thing about the so-called national resistance movement of NASA is the fact that it is masquerading itself as a constitutional process, which it is not. And you just need to remove the veneer. The anger with which they are speaking is, it tells you that this is not resistance in a democratic sense. It is resistance in the other sense. And many Kenyans are scared. A Kenyan professor met me at the Chinese embassy. And Professor, when you go to those TVs, tone down the rhetoric, let's lower the temperatures and so on. And I listened to my friend Agwanda here and the temperatures and so on. Now, we are contributing to raising the temperature, which is undue, which is not necessary. Now, on the question of the rule, Agwanda, it is, you know, Kenyans know themselves. We are married to each other. We have people. I'm married to Ulukambani. My sister is married in Bondo. The other one is married in Siopot, which is Busia, and the others. We are Kenyans, and the moment we begin to talk about tribes, we need to talk about Kukambas, those who are married to Kikuyus and Kambas. You need to talk about Kiruo, those who are married Karenjin and Ruos. And we need to begin talking about those other tribes, which we don't talk about, because they are there. The problem I find with the so-called national resistance movement is that it is putting one of our people, one of our tribes, in harm's way. Yeah. Because you're taking rural boys and girls to the streets so that they go to the police and they are shot, and therefore you start claiming genocide. Because genocide is simply a targeting of one community. We are intelligent enough to see, and that's why there has been a lot of restraint from the police. We know the trap that is ready for this country and the police force, and I hope they are listening, is that if you kill too many Ruos, Odinga and Co are going to claim that you have caused genocide. And Agwanda is already beginning to say it here. So please resist, restrain from killing Ruos, and don't kill anybody anyway, in any form. But Odinga should also be told in the same tone that don't weaponize your people. Don't turn your people into a weapon for your political gains. It is immoral, it is evil, it is criminal, it is bad in the eyes of God. You cannot turn your people into a political weapon.
All right, Professor, our time is limited. So, Michael, I'll give you a chance to wrap up within 1 minute and 30 seconds, please.
I do not want to see the Americans, the European Union, go to Mombasa and say to the leaders in Mombasa, why do you want to secede? You need to have one country. I want to see a government that reaches out, well position or no position, and say, what can we do for this country to move forward? I believe if that was done earlier, we would be somewhere. And you know what was happening? Just prior to the election, there were a lot of rhetorics about the extension, the dialogue that needed to be initiated. And most of the people said, you know, how can President Uhuru engage in dialogue before he gets, to be sworn in? He's now sworn in. I really believe that if he means well for this country, that's Uhuru and the executive, parliament and the Senate. If he means well in this country, they need to call the opposition on the table and have a serious discussion. Whether it is on issues of election or malpractice in this country, it needs to be dealt with. If Uhuru is serious about leaving the legacy that he wants to leave for this country, I think it will be important for him to start where it hurts more. Kenyans are saying that they want to secede. That's a serious discussion that needs to be put on the table so that they find out why are some of the Kenyans saying that they want to secede.
All right.
And I think it is important that dialogue should be given away for this country to move
All
forward.
right, thank you. Professor, your final thoughts?
On issues of secession, on issues of swearing in, on issues that undermine the core of our republic, that is not for me or for Agwanda to decide. Kenyans will decide. It's not for Uhuru Kenyatta. Our fathers defended this country. Our founding mothers defended this country. We will defend it against anything that violates it. That's one. Second, Kenya needs dialogue. There's no doubt about that. We need dialogue. We have established channels that are elected. All the leaders of Luo Nyanza are in our parliament. All the leaders of Western Kenya are in our parliament. They are in our Senate. Now, if Senate and Parliament convene tomorrow and say that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta need to have a dialogue and identify the issues, there is no reason why Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, both of them or their team, should not have dialogue, because that's our constitutional process. But it should not come from the streets.
All right.
Because we have, if all the Senate, all the county governments meet, county assemblies meet, and say,
All right.
Uhuru Kenyatta need
Professor,
to
we
meet,
have
that's
to
fine.
wind
Yeah,
up.
thank you.
Thank you very, very
Thank
much,
you.
Professor Peter Kagwanja and Michael Agwanda. Your names are very similar. That's where we wrap it up for our viewers on KTN Home. Thank you for joining us here on Morning Express. For our viewers on KTN News, we take a short break, but we'll be right back.